Hi, and welcome to the Route to CISO podcast. It's me, Chris Rides. I'm going to be your host, and I'm going to be chatting to seasoned Chief Information Security Officers about their career journeys. We're going to be unencrypting their real-life stories and searching for the hidden keys to help you fast-track your cybersecurity career. Welcome to the very last episode of Season 2 of the Route to CISO podcast. Really excited today to have Alissa Abdullah, Dr. J, as she's well known to probably most of you. Dr. J, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Good stuff. And can you let everybody know what you're kind of doing currently? And then we're going to dive right into your background and how you got into the industry.
So I am currently the Deputy Chief Security Officer for Mastercard, responsible for securing Mastercard's assets. And our assets to us are not just the information technology and information, data, people are part of that as well. So it's a huge remit.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure you're protecting everybody's data. You're definitely protecting mine. I don't want to run up any more bills than I already am. So
keep
especially
going.
if somebody else.
keep going, keep spending.
Well, look, let's go back to your sort of foundation and how did you get into the industry and what were you doing sort of even prior to that?
So oddly enough, I started out as a radio DJ. I was on a urban hip hop station and then I moved to a jazz station. And as I moved to the jazz station, I was in college and my professor said, my English professor, because I was getting a major in mass communications, she said, you should not do this. And I was taking the easy way out because I had been in radio for a good number of years at that point. And I just thought, this is just what I'm going to do because I've been doing it. My math teacher came to me, my math professor, and she said, you know, you have such a scientific brain. You have such a mathematical mind. You should really do something in math. And I said, well, if you find me a really cool job, then I will change my major. And she actually reached out to the National Security Agency, and I became one of the first co-op students from Savannah State University to be an intern or a co-op student at the National Security Agency. So that changed my trajectory from radio DJing and being on some reality show potentially to now being in technology and being in cybersecurity. But you asked me about my, how did I get into cyber?
Yeah.
We may talk about this a little bit, but I was the Deputy CIO of the White House, the Deputy Chief Information Officer for President Obama. And as I was looking at what else I wanted to do, I had a search firm that says, you really lean towards cybersecurity when you speak. Have you thought about a career in cyber? And I thought to myself, I'm not starting all over again. Like, what do you mean? But it ended up being such a great idea, such a great role. I became the first chief security officer for Stryker right after I left the White House. And it was just an amazing, amazing opportunity. And I've loved it ever since.
That's amazing. I was going to say it'd be easy to guess that you'd make a great radio personality. You can tell if anybody else can tell, although that's quite a change and a turnaround, right? That's such a crazy change from what you were doing before. When you got into the NSA, what were you doing when you very first got in? If you can say about it, obviously.
Yeah. I'll put it like this. I was responsible for helping to write cryptographic algorithms for some of our systems. So I am still a certified cryptologic engineer. I'm very, very proud of that.
Yeah.
And so, I have a huge cryptography background.
Do you still do? Is it like? Does that automatically mean that you do some you do math quizzes for fun and you
It does.
Yeah.
I love Kokoro puzzles, which is a type of Sudoku. I love Sudoku. I'm a crossword puzzle fanatic. That right there, that whole bottom shelf is all crossword puzzles. And I'm the person that's like, I love a fresh book. So that's why I have all of these right here, because I will go to the store and buy a fresh book. And now I've got, plenty of apps that help feed that side of me. But yes, I love puzzles.
That's I wish I did my A levels in maths. I did maths, physics, and chemistry, and in my head I was like, one day, Chris, you're going to be a pilot. That's why I did
Mm-hmm,
mine. And then I
mm-hmm,
worked at the airport because I come from London, right near Heathrow Airport. So I worked at the
mm-hmm.
airport, was my first job. I worked there, and I kind of saw everything going on. I was like, when I want to get on a plane, I want to go on vacation. I don't want to
Yeah,
be flying it, like
yeah.
feeling like I'm gonna go. And that was it. So that's as far as I got. I never got as far as this. That's crazy. So then you were doing that for the NSA, and then what was your trajectory as you went sort of through, and you stayed in sort of that sort of public service sort of part?
I did. I stayed in public service for a while and then decided, I was going to come out and be a government contractor. I live in the Washington, D.C. area. And so that's quite popular here. It's a huge, if you're
Hmm.
not in government, you're a government contractor type of community. I stayed in government contracting for a while. And that's really where I got a lot of my leadership chops. I was helping, I'll never forget, right before the White House, I was helping the Office of the Secretary of Defense build their cloud environment, their classified cloud environment. And I was leading that program before I got tapped on the shoulder for the White House. It's just such a unique opportunity. And I think, having that public sector and now, kind of moving into private sector and then going back to public sector for the White House really makes me, I think that's my secret sauce. I have so much different, such a vast aperture and perspective on cybersecurity,
Hmm.
on technology, on what's possible, on innovation, on how things should work, etc. So it's I think having both of that, the public sector and the private sector sitting on my shoulders, actually I think helps in all of my leadership positions now.
Yeah, yeah. Having that broad perspective is probably ideal for that, because a lot of people they're in the public sector and they're in there so long. Sometimes it's a real challenge for them to move into the private sector. What
Yes.
would you have any tips for people? And is there any difficulties you found with making that move?
There are, there are difficulties, and I'll explain it like this too. I've been in public sector and private sector, but then in private sector, I've been in healthcare, I've been in technology because I was the CISO of Xerox. Now I'm in financial services. But as I look back on my career, the commonality of it all is technology and cybersecurity. And I think, people say, man, you changed different sectors, but the commonality is cybersecurity and technology. And so I lean on that. I lean on what I know, what I'm good at, what I'm strong in. And then that nuance is what makes it fun and what's
Hmm.
helps me grow. So even though, I've done public sector, private, not, moved into, I was a deputy chief technology officer at Lockheed Martin, at aerospace, but still doing government contracting at that time as well. The bottom line, the thread that pulls it all together is technology and cybersecurity. And as I think about even like my next career, what do I want to do? What do I want to, do when I retire? It's going to be something in technology and cybersecurity, I'm sure.
Yeah.
You pull that thread, and that's what my passion is, and that's what I love. And so everything I rest on that.
It's not hard to see how much passion you've got for it sitting here talking to you now. It's that's great. And it's really strange. So I run a recruitment company, a cyber recruitment company. And so we see a lot of this, and we see some companies that are absolutely, we must have somebody that's coming out of the same industry, they must have industry knowledge. And then we see others that are actually, we're open to all, and the ones that seem to be open to other, a little bit open-minded,
Hmm.
find that not only do they get candidates that are a lot more, I guess, excited to work because it's a new industry, it's something new, even at CISO level, or like,
Right.
at high levels, you want to be learning something new, but also they think differently and they bring a
Hmm.
different perspective.
And what I will say to that is the adversary is not does not say I'm only going to work on financial sector companies, or I'm only going. The adversary just wants to win,
Yeah.
just wants to try, just wants to get out there, just wants to do it, just wants to keep beating the door down. I think if we look at our careers in the same way, we and I love the word aperture. We open our aperture a little bit,
Hmm.
and we say, you know what? I've learned so much in cybersecurity and aerospace. How can I take those learnings and apply it to where I'm going next, or another sector or another thing? When I thought about looking at my career, kind of comparing what I've seen at the White House, and what I've seen in in private sector, the adversary is using the same tools, the same techniques. The methodology might be a little bit different because of, just some nuances. Those same nuances are going to be nuances from sector to sector to sector, but that baseline is the same. He or she still wants data. He or she still wants your personal data. He or she still wants, as I used to joke with, with President Obama, he or she still wants street cred. That's right. You know what I mean? Sometimes it's not about the money. Sometimes it's about the credibility. And that doesn't change depending on where you are. It just, the adversary is just wants anything that they can get.
And do you think those, because I always feel like as a hacktivist, that's even worse, to have somebody that's not just after your money, because they'll go off to the next easiest place to get the money, right? They don't care whose money it is. But when it's you in particular that they want, that's a tough one to be up against.
Yeah, it's really tough. It's really tough. But I think the path of that is changing, because we've seen across the industry, we're in a sit and wait. Yeah. They're not going for the adversary may not be going for the big dollars anymore. He may just want, $20 from you, Chris, $20 from me, $20 from my mom. You get $20 from 10 people, you got 200. You put that on a massive scale. Oh my gosh. You could sit and fly to the south of France and have a great vacation for years to come. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I think we're moving from the big bang, the big buck, to really smaller things. And that's what I think scares me the most.
Yeah, that is scary. And I guess I'm sure AI will come at some point, but with the proliferation of AI, hopefully that's going to make it easier to defend, but it's definitely going to make it easier for people that are less skilled to do things that are much more challenging, right?
It has lowered the bar for entry, which means, as much as I love to say it is the great equalizer, because now everyone has access to, we had access to information, but how you process that information is very different. AI gives you help in how you process and how you think, and can expedite a lot of research capabilities that you might not, you might not have had, or actually heightens the curiosity as well. But the same thing that we're using, the same excitement we get, the same way we're playing with it, the adversary is doing this exact same thing and using it against us. So we got to be mindful of our data, where our data sits, who's using our data, how it's being used, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, I bet even just as you're sort of talking about it there, I can see, these same people that might be, trying to go after big companies, and then they're sitting there thinking, well, when I go after a big company and I get somewhere with it, somebody's determined to come back and find out who I am. Yeah. If I go after somebody for $100, $200, who's paying any attention, right?
Right.
Who cares about that?
Right.
It does make it difficult for everyday people, right?
It does. And I kind of hinted to this a minute ago, but, and not to get too deep, but AI has led us to deep fakes. I think the future is taking us to a place where you're not going to be asked or challenged by the hacker saying, I'm the CEO. Can you transfer this amount of money for a secret acquisition? That's not going to be it. It's going to be, hey, I'm from, pick your favorite company. I'm from X company's help desk, and this is our new way of authenticating you. And it's going to be face to face. We're going to be able to see the person, but we're not, the technology is going to be so good, we're not going to know it's a deep fake. And we're going to say, oh my gosh, this is great. You need my PIN number? Let me give you my PIN number. And that's all it's going to take. Think about now how many people would be excited that a well-known company with a big brand behind it calls and says, this is our new way, our new secure way they're not going to know. They're not going to know Joe Schmo who's sitting on the help desk to make those calls. They're not even going to know where to look to verify that information. So now the trust but verify goes out the window.
Yeah. This is good. It's going to be a whole, I think the next few years are going to be very, very interesting as things.
Very interesting.
Yeah, they kind of scale up quickly. Well, look, we've got. I knew this would happen. We're gonna just talk and go. We've got to speak. We got to still speak about your career, because I know that's what people want to know about. But we're going to go off in a million directions. I know we're going to, and that's great. Going back, so I want to talk about when you went from an individual contributor to management for the first time, and the reason why I'm going to focus on a couple of areas, and that's one of them, is because there are a lot of people out there that are individual contributors that have worked hard to get into the industry, and they now want to move up to management, and they're making, struggling to make that. So I think hearing other people's stories really helps. So tell me a bit about, how did you make that move?
I think it was very intentional for me. And it was a great opportunity. I was an information system security officer with the government, what they call ISOs. I had a great team. We were, looking at a specific system and trying to make sure that it had all the right controls and all the right, those controls were documented, they were tested, etc. I think I had such a good support system, and you have to be careful with your network, and don't be lax about your network. I had a great network, a great group of peers that I stayed friends with as I became through the co-op program and all of that. And we just leaned on each other, and we helped each other, and we asked, don't be afraid to ask questions. We, just because it's your first management position doesn't mean you're the king and queen and you know everything. Know what you know and know what you don't know. And I like to tell people as well, just because you're the manager doesn't mean you have to talk. Sometimes silence is loud, and you should practice silence, because sometimes that will get the point across, or sometimes it's good to listen and allow others. One of my best managers told me, you get to take credit for everything that everyone else does. And I didn't even think about that. And I thought, oh yeah. Then it really gave me the perspective that I needed to make sure that I pushed everyone on my team, because now it's not just about you as an individual contributor. It's about the entire team. And if the whole team is successful, then you are successful.
Yes. And it's funny because I've spoke about this before on the podcast, but I had a manager. My manager had a saying, which was 2 ears and 1 mouth. And that's how you should use them. That's always stuck with me. And as much as I love the sound of my own voice and I could chat forever, like I'm trying to always be really conscious on that listening. And then the same thing with silence, right? The powerfulness of asking a question and then just shutting up, right? Listen, take your time, let people feel like they can open up is like, I don't know.
I one of my favorite books is Bob Iger's The Ride of a Lifetime. It is such a good book. And I am not even a self-help biography type of girl. I'm a murder mystery, urban fiction girl when I'm reading. But Bob Iger's book reads very juicy. It's got some good tidbits in it. And one of the things that he said is, don't let your ego get in the way of what's best for the company. And you have to think about that as a manager. You want to take credit. You want to be in there talking. I've been in a lot of rooms where they say you want a seat at the table, and when you get a seat at the table, you want to talk at the table. Well, yeah, but don't let your ego get in the way of what's best for the company. And sometimes what's best for the company is silence. Sometimes what's best for the company is having someone else, empowering your team and having them do things as well, and extending them out while you sit in the background and watch and help develop them as great leaders. Because good leaders develop other good leaders.
Yes, building succession is so important. And then you're right, because good leaders as well, if you're the quiet one in a meeting, a good leader knows like when to look, Dr. J, you've not said much on this, and I know you've normally got some good stuff to say. And then everybody listens, right? Give
Yes,
people a chance to talk.
exactly.
So when you got that, so you were an ISSO, you got the manager position. Did you have to apply for it? Did it kind of naturally come
Yes.
because they saw you? Yeah.
Mm-mm. No, I applied for it. Your first manager position many times. Well, no, I'm not going to say you have to apply for it. You don't. There's plenty of people who get tapped on the shoulder. I applied for my first management position, and um, I applied and I prepared and I knew what was needed. I knew that I could do it. I just had so much confidence because I knew the manager that was there before. So I was quite prepared for it.
And did you get a lot of support? Because that's a tough jump. Because I find a lot of people, like sometimes you're excellent at your job, and so people respect you, but you need more than respect to be a good manager, and it's not naturally something always comes naturally to everybody.
Right. So, I got a lot of support. I got tons of support, and at that time I had a really really good mentor. But I will also say this: management is not leadership. That's let's not confuse the things. Management is I got to do your performance reviews. I got to set your goals and objectives for the year. I've got to manage and make sure that our team is meeting those objectives. Leadership is very different. Leadership is really I'm setting the vision. I'm being the example. I'm advocating for. I'm being a sponsor for. That is leadership. And so when you talk about your first position, it is a management position, and you may not have curated yourself just yet as the leader that you're going to become in the future.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, that's all the points you're sort of bringing out are exciting me. I feel like all this sort of stuff, it's great, juicy stuff that people need to know, right? You need to know these things.
Yes.
So that's great. And so, and ordinarily now, I probably ask you, I know, and I do want to come back and find out how you then went, you told me a bit about going into security and then, going in as a CISO. I want to hear about how you managed to get your job at the White House, because that I'm fascinated. How did you know it was coming? How does these things
No,
happen?
I had no idea. I did not know anyone who worked there or worked on the campaign. When President Obama won his first term, that
Hmm.
night, while my family was celebrating, I was in my office at home, and at the bottom of his website, it immediately turned into his transition website. And there was a link on the bottom saying, work for the administration or support the administration. And I clicked on that link and I filled out my profile. And that's really what happens. You fill out a profile. You could be a shoe shiner, or you could be, the newspaper delivery person for the White House. It's a vast amount of jobs. You don't go in and say, I want to do this. There were people who gave up, their careers during that time just to put them on pause to say, I want to serve the country in this way. Luckily, I filled out my profile. I must have said the right keywords because I got tapped on the shoulder 2 years later. And this is a funny story. I got tapped on the shoulder and I got a call and didn't answer the call, got a voicemail. And the voicemail said, hi, we're from presidential personnel. We have a role for you, Deputy CIO of the White House. Please give us a call back and let us know if you're interested in a discussion. And they hang up the phone. And I'm like, wait a minute. No phone number. I don't know who I'm talking to. Like, what is going on? Like, what are the odds? And so I ended up looking up the White House phone number. Yes, the White House still has a phone number. The White House still has an operator. But I called the ADA line, the American Disabilities Act line at the bottom of the White House page, and it goes directly to the operator. And I said, this is going to sound really, really weird, but, and I gave her the story, and she said, hold on, I know exactly who called you. So that is how that happened.
That's great. And then did you have to go through interviews and you have to go? Yeah.
Yes. I went through a lot of interviews. I went through a lot of vetting. And I actually did not get the role until the end. I want to say like maybe September or October, end of the last 2 years of his first term, the first 2 years of his second term. That's how long I stayed.
Blimey. Okay,
Yeah.
so it was 2 years 2 years after applying on the website.
2 years after applying on the website. And let me say this too, because a lot of people, I really, really remember during that time, a lot of people saying, man, that's a huge risk. You're going to take this role and only know that 2 years are guaranteed, right?
Right.
Because he may not get reelected. And then what are you going to do? And I said, I'm going to use this title as like it's no one's business. I'm going to work this title as much as I can. And luckily, I mean, everything that I learned and the exposure that I got just in those 2 years was fantastic, was amazing. But then to be able to stay and make some meaningful impacts the first 2 years of his second term was just outstanding.
And you must have some great stories. Come on.
Yes.
Give me just a couple, please.
I've got really good stories. So when I got there, I guess maybe the first couple of months, we were in a very brittle infrastructure time. When we got there, there were desktops and floppy drives. And that was 2009 was when President Obama got there. Desktops and floppy drives. And guess what? They were Gateway computers. And Gateway had gone out of business. They had already gone bankrupt. And so we were buying, quiet as it's kept, we were buying gateways off of eBay for the parts so that we could fix the computers so that we could at least be in a position where everything was running well and we could modernize. And of course we modernized. And then the running joke, his second term was every time we turned around, oh my gosh, we found another conference room with a Gateway computer in it. And so that became the running joke. And like, when will these ever end? When will they die? But, it's just the White House is a startup company every 4 to 8 years. The president and how he wants to run determines the technology and how forward moving that technology is going to be, et cetera, et cetera. And, Obama was there at a very pivotal time in technology. I think it's one of those things, the opportunity, the planets aligned, the luck was there because it was a time of digitization. It was a time of modernization, modern technology. And he was the one to say, hey, we're gonna modernize the White House and make sure we can use big data, because I ran on big data. I ran using big data. So now I want to govern using big data.
That I love that. I was lucky enough to go up to the White House last year, and they arranged all the sort of for the tour, which is great. Which anybody can. This is the stuff I find crazy. Like anybody can go and do that tour,
yes.
right?
Yes.
You just need to write up, apply, and they fix it. I was going up for a meeting at the Roosevelt,
Roosevelt room.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Is that right? What's the building right next
door?
Eisenhower.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, that's right. So I was going up there for that meeting, and they got me last minute into a show round. But just going around the Eisenhower building, and they gave me a sort of a big sort of look around, showed me all of what was going on. Oh, it's amazing. I saw so much stuff.
Yeah, I will say, even if you come to Washington, D.C. and can't get in the White House because you just, your senator didn't respond or you just didn't get tickets to go in, the Eisenhower building has so much rich history. It is, and it's a beautiful building. Such a beautiful building.
Yeah, they were showing me like, oh, these are the lights. Yeah, Edison put them in personally.
Yes.
And I saw like the desk. I think it's the vice president's desk with all the signatures in it and stuff. Oh my goodness, it was such a great. It was amazing. And I would say anybody that goes up there as well, because you can get to see the Capitol building. You can do the J. Edgar Hoover building. I didn't get into J. Edgar Hoover. I left it too late, and I tried to pull a few strings with friends that were in, and like they were like, it's completely full. We can't figure anything out. So I got to do that one next time I'm up there. But what an amazing place to be. Now, so then what made you sort of then go and decide you're going to finish that there, or you're going to leave there and you're going to go into the private sector? Because that was your next step, right?
Yes, it was. So I wasn't going to, this is funny too. And my husband is probably going to laugh when he listens to this. I wasn't going to leave when I left. But my husband told me, after I was going to write it out. I was going to wait till the very, very end. just because it was just so much fun. I was just really, really enjoying it. My husband said to me, no one looks cute at the end of a party when the lights come on. And I said, wow. Wow. Okay, that's a way of putting it. And he said, you've done so much. You have accomplished so much. You've got a great story to tell. Tell it now. Why don't you leave and tell it now and let that start you on your trajectory for what's next? Yeah. And I thought about it and I said, that's a good idea. That's a good idea. And that is why I left when I did. But as I was leaving, Deputy CIO of the White House, I said to myself, I'm going to be a CIO. There's no way I'm not going to be a CIO of a Fortune 500 company. Like, there's no way. I'm the Deputy CIO of the White House. Where can you go past this? So I'm interviewing. The headhunters are talking to me, executive search firms. And I had one executive search firm that said to me, you really lean heavy in cybersecurity when you talk. I don't know if you realize that or not. You really should think about being a chief security officer. And it was that whisper in my ear. And it took me a second. The first time I reflected on it, I was like, he clearly doesn't get me, doesn't know what he's talking about. But then after I sat and thought, I said, you know what? I was an information system security officer. You know, that was my really first big management position. I had done stuff at NSA that was heavy cybersecurity related work, building cryptographic algorithms and security infrastructures. And so he and I talked again, and he said, just trust me. Let me do this for you. And I gave him my resume, had reframed some of the value add and the outcomes. And that's how I got the first chief security officer job for Stryker. Stryker is healthcare, hip and knee replacement parts, your medical defibrillators that are in the hospital. Those are most likely Stryker beds, hospital beds. That's how I got that, was someone whispered in my ear. That's another thing. You can't let your ego get in the way of listening when people are trying to tell you, when people are trying to help you, when people are trying to guide you. And I'm glad I did not. I'm glad I did not stick my heels in the ground and say, no, I want to do the CIO thing, because I have just been so alive and so fulfilled being a chief security officer.
It's so funny. I feel like every time I travel, I'm sitting next to a Stryker salesperson. I don't know. I've done so many times. I've sat next to, I don't know, maybe, I think they must have a big office in Vegas. Like, I guess that's what it is. But always, I seem to always have a Stryker person next to me. That must be so interesting, because you're then dealing with stuff. You know, one of the people I was speaking to was telling me that they sell like the saws that they use to do brain surgeries and stuff. And I'm like, this stuff is correct. Like the stuff that they're making and obviously securing is like, you know, really lives really do depend on it. So. They are a true tech company when you think about a tech company in the healthcare space, right? They are really looking at some major advancements in healthcare technology. It's great to watch. Love that. I'm looking at the time here and I'm thinking we are pretty much there at end of part 1. And I'm enjoying this. I feel like I don't want to stop yet, but we're going to end up with part 1 being like an hour and a half. Dr. J, thank you for joining us. Obviously, we're actually going to be back in a few seconds, but for everybody else, they've got to wait a whole week before they get to the second part of this. And this is probably a nice time to start your first CSO gig. I think we're going to be jumping into what you've done since then. So this is probably good stuff. So I'm going to say goodbye to the audience and thank them for joining me and Dr. J for this. And we'll be back next week. So this is end of part 1. Look out for part 2 in a week's time. Thank you, Dr. J.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Route to CISO podcast. If there's something you really want me to ask on the next episode, or if you're a CISO who wants to inspire the next generation, please reach out. I'll leave a URL to my LinkedIn profile and make sure you connect and message me there. We're always looking for feedback, so please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.